It's okay not to be okay, but I promise I'm trying by rayrae118. Chapter 27. Poppy immediately bundled Harry into a bed, giving him a pain reliever before checking him over for injuries. Besides the obvious cut on his arm, he ached all over from the Cruciatus curse. The entire group had been allowed into the infirmary with Harry. Minerva, Remus, Sirius and Ginny. All looked like they would like nothing more than to confront Voldemort and tear him limb from limb for hearing him put that curse 3 times by the evil man. Minerva even started hissing, her eyes narrowing to slits, though she forced herself to calm down when Poppy started threatening to throw them out. The Mediwitch had to work out around the petite redhead who had attached herself to Harry's side. She was only allowed to stay because she refused to leave, and Minerva had quietly implored Poppy to allow it. She knew Ginny needed to be reassured that Harry was here and safe. Soon enough she was insisting he take a dreamless sleep potion, and Ginny relaxed as she felt her boyfriend drift off. Poppy looked up at the adults. "He'll be fine," she assured them. "He'll be sore for a few days, but there are no long-term lasting effects. Other than that, the cut on his arm is the only injury of note. I've healed it, but the skin will be tender for a few days, so make sure he takes care of that arm." Minerva nodded and walked with Poppy back to her office as Sirius and Remus took places on either side of the bed from Ginny. "Thank you, Poppy." Poppy smiled sadly. "Why does it all have to happen to him?" she asked rhetorically. Minerva snorted lightly. "Because old men can't help but play games with his life." Poppy looked startled, but Minerva didn't elaborate, as she wished the Mediwitch a good night. "Minerva!" The Transfiguration Mistress turned around and returned to Madame Pomfrey's side. "Perhaps Mrs. Weasley should be returned to her dorm?" Minerva looked across at the young woman, still seated by her boyfriend's side. She shook her head, smiling fondly. "I will give her my permission to be out of bed for the night. I think she needs to be here." Poppy looked like she wanted to protest, but Minerva didn't give her a chance, as she returned to her charge and made herself comfortable in a conjured chair. She offered to conjure some for the others. Sirius and Remus were both grateful, but Ginny just stubbornly shook her head, and instead lay down in the bed on top of the covers. She was facing Harry, and kept his hand intertwined with hers as she studied him in his sleep. The adults weren't quite sure what to make of that, but the young girl dropped off to sleep shortly after, and no one had the heart to wake her up and insist that she move. Minerva even enlarged the bed slightly, so she wasn't in danger of falling off should she shift in her sleep. They passed the night watching over 2 special young people, talking quietly about what was to come. Given Harry's parting statement before being led away, they all knew things would be happening, and soon. If he who must not be named was indeed back, everything would change. When Harry woke up, he felt completely rested. He was relieved to not have to worry about any dreams. The first thing he noticed when he woke up was a mane of red hair in his face. He started for a moment before he recognized Ginny. Looking around showed him to be in the hospital wing. Then he saw his guardians and Remus all sleeping in conjured chairs. Harry panicked briefly before trying to wake Ginny up as gently as possible before anyone saw them. Minerva began to stir a moment later, and when she saw Harry, she smiled gently. "Good morning, Harry." Harry looked guilty and glanced at Ginny. Minerva shook her head. "We left her there for a reason, Harry. You weren't going to do anything, and I think she needed to be with you as much as you needed her." Harry looked up, surprised, and then smiled slightly. "Thanks," he whispered, returning his gaze to his girlfriend. Just having her next to him made him feel so much better. Sirius and Remus woke up next, and a few minutes later Ginny stirred. A few minutes later Poppy exited her office and smiled at the large group, heading over to give Harry another check-up. "How are you feeling, Mr. Potter?" she asked, waving her wand over his body, before grasping his left arm to check the healing wound. Harry shrugged, looking down. "I'm fine," he replied quietly. Minerva was about to protest that statement, but Ginny got there first. "Harry James Potter, what have I told you about using that word?" she asked rhetorically, before she gave his shoulder a light slap. Harry looked taken aback, but Ginny was just getting warmed up. "You promised me you would stop lying, so look at Madame Pomfrey and to tell her the truth." Sirius and Remus stared. "Scary," Sirius whispered as Remus nodded. Ginny and Harry looked at the pair confused. "What?" Harry asked. Sirius looked at his godson. "It's like watching Lily yell at James all over again." Both students looked slightly uncomfortable, but Harry smiled at his girlfriend. He sent feelings of assurance through their bond before he turned back to the Mediwitch. "I'm a little sore," he admitted. Poppy nodded, hiding her own smile. "That is to be expected, Mr. Potter. After an ordeal such as yours, I would be shocked if you weren't. As I already told your guardians, you will be so for the next few days. Just take it easy. Don't overexert yourself. No more morning runs for at least a week." Harry nodded, though he felt a little disappointed. Sirius looked proud that his godson had been keeping up with the exercise they'd started the summer before. Poppy left and Harry turned back to the adults. "So, what happened last night, while I was gone?" he asked, somewhat hesitantly. It was Minerva who answered, her voice soft and reassuring. "There was a lot of confusion. Ginny and your other friends have explained how and why they captured Crouch Jr., and I suppose we are lucky that Amelia was there. I heard the minister try and deny anything about yet another Azkaban escapee. If he had his way, Crouch would have been kissed on sight before any questions could have been asked." Sirius shuddered. "Did anyone tell him about Voldemort?" Harry asked, noting the flinches from Minerva and Remus, but happy to note that his girlfriend and his godfather had no reaction. The other two's reactions were much less pronounced than they had been previously, so Harry considered that a win. Minerva sighed. "We all went with you, so I don't know what the minister has or has not been told. However, Amelia did hear you, and she's not one to play the politics. She will make sure that the right people know." Harry nodded, relieved. Minerva's next words had him subconsciously curling in on himself with dread. "Harry, you will need to talk about what happened." Ginny reached out and took him in her arms, offering her support both in body and in mind. Minerva looked like she truly regretted what she had to say next. "Albus needs to know, Harry." They all looked like they wanted to protest, but the professor just shook her head. "He's the leader of the light, and probably one of the few who could make Cornelius see reason. We will stay with you, and you don't have to tell him anything you don't want to." Poppy returned at that moment, muttering, looking like she wanted to keep whatever it was to herself, but she dutifully passed on the message. "Mr. Potter, there are a number of people waiting outside to see you. Should I send them away?" Harry shook his head, sitting up straighter in bed, and Poppy walked towards the door, still muttering. 15 minutes only," she ordered as the group descended. Harry was shocked. Cedric was there, as was Fleur and Victor. The part of Vila had been treated and released the night before by the Mediwitch without having to spend any time in the hospital wing. Mrs. Weasley and Bill were back, and Harry noted with interest that Bill made an effort to ask Fleur how she was feeling, and to stand next to her. Hermione, Ron, Neville and Susan were also there, as well as Fred, George, Angelina, Alicia, Katie, Cho, Blaze, Daphne and Luna. There looked to be a few more people out in the hall, but these were the important ones, his close friends. They all spent some time talking, and everyone expressed their congratulations to Harry, as the second Triwizard champion. Cedric tried to tell them that they should split the prize money, but Harry just shook his head. "Trust me, Cedric, I don't need it." Cedric just shook his head stubbornly. "So give it away. But you earned it, so it's yours." Harry looked like he was ready to protest again, but then he thought of a use for the money, so he just sighed and nodded, nodding in resignation. Ginny, catching on to his thoughts, gave him a beaming smile. "That's brilliant, Harry. They'll love you." Harry smiled back. "As long as your mum never finds out," he replied. That little conversation was mental, by the way. They both laughed a little, making everyone else confused, but they didn't elaborate. Poppy kicked the large group out after 15 minutes, as promised, but a few of them vowed to come back later. Susan informed them in a quiet tone that she wanted to talk to him about something, and a side glance she threw at Sirius indicated what it was about. Dumbledore came in after the group was gone, and he was most insistent on speaking with Harry. "I must insist we go to my office to talk," he persisted. Poppy shook her head stubbornly. "Mr. Potter has not been cleared to leave yet. If you want to speak with him, you will do so here or not at all." Dumbledore sighed in resignation before he tried to get the still remaining adults and Ginny to leave them alone. Minerva's eyes narrowed as she stood up. "Harry is a minor, Albus. He is allowed to have his guardians present. We are not leaving." Albus had to accept that, but when he tried to get Ginny to leave, Harry put his foot down. "She's staying, or you can just guess at what happened yesterday." The adults looked slightly taken aback, but Sirius and Remus smiled after a moment. Albus grit his teeth but remained calm as he conjured up a squishy armchair, and asked Harry to tell him of what had happened after he and Cedric had disappeared. It took a while. Harry spoke in great detail, talking about how he had recognised the name Tom Riddle, and known there was something wrong. He told them about how he had pushed Cedric out of the way of the killing curse, feeling the heat as it passed by. Ginny tried to clamp down the spike of fear that rose up, hearing how close he had come to death. Harry told them about petrifying Cedric and hiding him, so that he wouldn't be found. "They were after me. They'd already tried to kill him once. I couldn't let it happen. He's my friend." They all said they understood, while Dumbledore didn't say anything beyond a nodding and asking what happened after that. So Harry told them about being stunned and waking up tied to Riddle's grave. He informed them of the resurrection ritual, which had Dumbledore very interested. Harry was certainly caught a gleam of satisfaction in the headmaster's eyes when he spoke about how Wormtail had used his blood. Both Sirius and Remus were growling at their former friend, but they remained quiet to hear the rest of it. They had tears in their eyes at hearing how Voldemort had used the Cruciatus curse, and Ginny's grip on his hand just got tighter. Harry recited the names of the Death Eaters he had heard, and finally moved on to the duel. They were proud of how he had managed to throw off the Imperius curse, but they were all holding their breath to hear the conclusion. When Harry spoke of the connection their wands had formed, and how the ghost-like people had come out of the bond, there was no question about it. Dumbledore's eyes were gleaming. "Priori incantatem," he murmured. "What's that?" Harry asked, confused. Dumbledore sat back and sighed. "Your wand shares a core with Voldemort's wand, Harry. As such, they will never be able to work properly together. When forced to duel, one wand will make the others regurgitate the last spells the other had used." Harry nodded, and finished his tale. He was almost crying when he spoke of seeing the wispy images of his parents, which made Sirius, Remus, and Minerva leak a few tears as well. He informed them of how they had lingered to give him time to escape, and how he had returned to Cedric, acioed the cup, and returned to Hogwarts. Dumbledore stood up when he was finished. "Thank you, Harry. Professor, what's going to happen now?" Dumbledore's question caused Harry's question caused Dumbledore to turn around in his path to the door. He sighed internally. "I will attempt to make the minister see reason, and certain people must be informed." He gave his Transfiguration professor a pointed look, which she understood. Harry nodded and watched the headmaster depart for the hospital wing. The adults all shared a significant glance, knowing what Dumbledore was talking about. The Order of the Phoenix was going to be reformed. They decided to leave the young couple alone for a while, promising to return before he was discharged, and left to have a serious conversation about recent events. Harry and Ginny stayed on the bed for a while, talking through their bond, as Harry told her about seeing his parents like that, and how he felt hearing them tell him how proud they were. They were both crying when Poppy came back with another dose of dreamless sleep. Harry was too tired to argue. End of chapter 28, part 1. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this. I actually quite like this chapter. Minerva putting her foot down to Dumbledore is very satisfying. And good luck trying to get Fudge to see reason. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and hit that little bell to get notified whenever I upload a video. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well. You can find me at PJ's Reads. You'll see my logo for my channel is the same one for my profile picture. Hope you have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. See you next video. Bye.